In this ever-so-changing digital world, mobile phone users are being urged to safeguard their private information. As a WhatsApp scam makes the rounds, we're now joined by Arthur Goldstock to tell us more about what to look out for, rather. He's a technology expert. Arthur, always good to see you. Thank you very much for your time. Let's start with the latest trick. What are we seeing?
There's around 10 WhatsApp scams doing the rounds, but the one that's almost the most common is what they call mom and dad impersonation schemes, where it's either parents asking their kids for money, supposedly, or the kids asking their parents for money. And usually the number comes from the call comes from an unknown number claiming to be the child. They've lost their phone, or it's broken, and they've had to borrow a phone, or it's a new number, and they're in real trouble because of the phone being stolen, and please send money to this bank account, something along those lines. And generally speaking, what you find is that older people tend to fall for this because they are more gullible, they're not tech savvy, they're not familiar with the scams, and most of all, they would hate their loved ones to be in difficulty. But that's just one of the many scams doing the rounds. There's a lot of phishing scams, phishing with a PH, where you get a message that appears to come from a legitimate source, and that can be either someone you know or a business. I had one, for example, from my mobile provider, supposedly, but it didn't quite look right, asking me to click on a link because there was something wrong with my account, or I had to reactivate something, etc. It can be anything from that your bank account has been blocked and you must click here to unblock it, all the way through to here's an interesting link, or here's a gift card for you. But if you don't know the source, it's not someone you deal with, it's not something that you engage with, then you have to be suspicious. Any unsolicited message that you get on WhatsApp must be treated as a potential scam.
You say something didn't quite look right where that phishing scam is concerned. What did you see that raised an alarm bell?
Essentially, there are only certain ways in which your mobile service provider will communicate with you, and only certain kinds of text that they would send to you on WhatsApp. And you would have had to sign up or add them as a contact on WhatsApp and identify them as that contact. And if the message comes from a number that you haven't signed up to or added as a contact, then that's immediately an alarm bell. With banks, for example, no bank in South Africa will ask you to click on a link to fill in your password. American banks still do that. PayPal still does that, but no South African bank will ask that, and people still fall for it. They get emails or text or WhatsApp messages, supposedly from the bank, asking them to click here because your account has been blocked. To unblock it, you must type in your username and password. Yeah, right. That's the scammer wanting your username and password.
What do we know about the DNA of these scammers, right? Usually when you look at flicks, it's somebody in a dark room eating pizza. That's the typical American visual of somebody who is not only a scammer, but does nefarious activity on the digital space. But what do we know them? How would they have gotten your contact number? Is it a random act that happens, or are you being targeted?
There's a range of ways they do it. There are ways to, in fact, buy lists of phone numbers on the dark web. There are people who guess the numbers and send to random numbers. You can actually get a random number generator online. It will generate what looks like a legitimate phone number. It might not actually belong to someone, but if you try enough of those, chances are you will reach someone that it is their number. But also a lot of people have their contact details available online, and scammers are looking for those numbers and trying to contact you using public information that you have actually given out publicly, which also raises another issue, incidentally, which is that one of the absolute rules of avoiding these kind of scams is never to give out any personal information to anyone that you don't personally know and haven't personally verified and has a good reason that they need that information. And that includes anything from your bank account details to your passwords, and especially a password you never give out to anybody in any forum whatsoever.
What about calls, right? So you receive a call and somebody is purporting to be from your bank, because even now they use cell phone numbers. It's no longer a 011 or 012. So you pick up thinking perhaps it's a family member that's in trouble.
If you just pick up the phone, nothing's going to happen. It's what you do once you've picked up the phone and what information you give out that is going to get you into trouble. But you've also got to be aware of the kind of scams that are doing the rounds. And the famous one that caught a lot of people in the last 5 years in South Africa was a phone call saying that your employee, it can be a domestic worker, it can be a staff member, was killed in an accident. And I'm their relation, whatever, and we desperately need money for the funeral. Can you send us 1,000 rand to cover funeral costs? And usually people are in such shock they do it. But they should know that that's actually a very popular way of scamming you out of your money. Generally speaking, the solution is to try and get hold of the person who is supposedly in trouble. Also, a lot of WhatsApp messages, Facebook messages, and emails are sent by people claiming to be a friend. They've mimicked the account, sometimes hacked into the account, but very often simply created an account that sounds like a legitimate account. And they say that they in deep trouble, they've had their wallet stolen, and can you please send them money to this account or this e-wallet or whatever the case might be. And you think it's the person, and you send them the money. But the obvious thing to do is to try and get hold of the person through a separate channel. And in most cases, you are going to get hold of that person and discover that this message didn't come from them at all.
You mentioned, Arthur, a little bit earlier on that you would think once you know better, you do better, but alas, more and more people are still falling victim to these scammers. And so what is it about people or about us that makes us so vulnerable to these scams?
There's a few things. One is sheer ignorance. People don't keep up with what's happening in their world. But a second one is that we tend to trust human nature, and we tend to believe the best of other people. We start off believing that people contacting us are legit. We don't start off thinking this is likely to be a scammer. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. We start off thinking that this is a legitimate person, and only after we've been scammed do we become cynical about other people.
Thank you very much, Arthur Goldstock. He's a technology expert.